Welcome to Verify Infield, the Millwork Podcast. Your host, Jacob Edmond, CEO of Ductworks, will be interviewing experts in the industry to bring you insights and knowledge about the latest trends, techniques, and challenges in millwork. Whether you're a seasoned professional or just starting out, this podcast is for you. So sit back, relax, and join us as we explore the world of millwork. Here's Jacob.
Got John VanErem here. Thanks for joining here. And you're from Louisville. You are out of town traveling. I appreciate you making time to record today. But John VanErem is Vice President of Project Management at Adams Group. We worked together at USA Millwork previously in a number of capacities and got you on today to talk about how can engineers and project managers work together effectively. I know this is a topic that is near and dear to both of our hearts. We've collaborated a ton together, and I know this is something you're still continuing to work on in your new role. But before we dive into that, can you just give us a little bit about your background, how you started in the industry, and the path of got to your current role?
Yeah. First of all, thanks for having me. It's exciting to be able to see and talk to you again. I know we've kept up, and it's good to have this conversation to help your listeners here. So I'm excited. A little bit about me. Again, my name is John VanErem, currently Vice President of Project Management, and I got rolled into install, so I have that under my wing as well, but a lot of it is around the project management. I've been in the industry for over 20 years now. Started way back, and again, I'm going to kind of go back to my high school days, and I got a funny story. Again, I'm a person of faith, and I believe that God's given me the grace to be in this industry and help me all the way back in my high school days. So my parents got divorced. I lived in South Dakota, actually, and I may be the only person you know from South Dakota. It's one of the fun facts about me. But we moved to Kansas City, and it was late to register, and I really wanted to get into shop class in my high school. And we go to the register, and she's, "I'm sorry, that class is all full." And I was super bummed. My mom said, "I'm not going to let this happen." And she stood up and fought for it. And a lot of weeks later, got me in as an extra to the class, which is not a class you want to have too many extras in. But it was a blessing in disguise, and spent my 4 year and just fell in love with the industry, fell in love with woodworking. My teacher led me to a path down at Pittsburgh State, where he was from, and did a 4-year stint down in Pittsburgh, Kansas at Pittsburgh State. Many of your listeners may know who that or where that is, and I am a proud gorilla, and I'm happy to say that I graduated with a business minor from Pitt State as well. From there, I don't have the options that the kids had today. Those guys are lucky, and I moved back home to Kansas City and started working a couple different shops to find my niche, tried residential, did some different things, but finally got a chance to be a general manager with a company called Gilpatrick Woodworks, and they allowed me that. And unfortunately, 2008 hit, and we had to make some unfortunate choices to scale back down, and decided to head over to RCS. After being a project manager and doing some different things there, I ended up getting an opportunity to become one of the owners or partners in that company, and worked there for 10 years until the excitement of really USA Millwork came along. I couldn't help but see the freight train that was coming down the tracks on social media with Patrick and Matt and Brian Troska and those guys, and decided that let's give this a try and see what happened. History ran its course in unfortunate circumstances with COVID and some other things. What could have been died along with that, but I got to meet some really great people, was really excited for that opportunity and the chances that they gave me. Through all that, I kept going back to Pittsburgh State to do career fairs and do all that stuff. And that's where I started meeting Adams Group way back when, maybe 15 years ago, and started a friendship with some of those guys. They continued at AWI, where we would connect here and there. They came into our energy early adopter program, so I got to know a little bit of them there, and they just always stuck. And so when the opportunity came after USA Millwork, I said, let's move the family to Florida, and here I am today. So that's a little bit about me. Again, I failed to share that I have run the gamut of all different departments. I was a lead engineer once. I was a program engineer once. I was a drafter once. And there is a path to that executive leadership if you're willing and hungry to go do it. I know that's not what this podcast is necessarily for, but there is hope for everybody out there if they are willing to push themselves through it.
Awesome. Oh, there's some stuff in there. Definitely. I didn't even know. I don't think I knew you were originally from South Dakota.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Every once in a while it comes out, eh?
Yeah. So we obviously a lot of history there, a lot about your experience. I definitely do think we've got some listeners that know about Pitt State, and interesting to hear the Pitt State of today is definitely different than when you went there, and in no small part because of people like you and leaders in this industry that continue to pour into that program. But now in your current role, and kind of on topic for today, we're talking about how engineers and PMs can work together. And I think it would be good to start with what is the role of a project manager? Because I know we're going to have listeners from all different kind of experience levels in this industry, and hopefully some that are tangential or outside of the industry. So what does a good PM do? What does a project manager in the millwork industry do?
That's a great question. Yeah, it's a great question. I think it really sets a lot of the foundation for a lot of our discussions today. So I do want to make sure I'm clear. Some people have different terminologies for engineers, and I want to be clear on where our company is. So if I spew out these things, what this definition is. So we actually have a drafting team, or we outsource drafting to a company like Ductworks. And so I'll call those drafters or drafting. We have an engineering team that really does like from red line cleanup, material order, coding, all that other stuff, all the way through that cleaning up for field dimensions. That's what I call the engineering team. So I want to make sure that those definitions are clear just for that. That being said, I'll dive right into it. From a project management standpoint, I really see 5 qualities or what really makes a good project manager that I've seen from my past. And there's a lot more than 5, but these are the 5 key ones that I wanted to touch on today. Are really excellent communication. That goes without saying. Everybody needs to be as best as they can at communication, but the best project managers are excellent communicators. And I'll get into each one of these a little bit more and how that relates to the listeners that you have on here with that drafting and engineering focus, if you will. A good PM is consistent. We see the same things over and over, right? We don't get Jekyll and Hyde sometimes, and it's you did this last time and we're doing this time. Knowing expectations of what you're going to get is key for a good project manager. They really listen and use those experts, if you will. So I would say the best project manager is not the guy that's standing on the mountaintop saying that he knows it all. He's using the resources that he or she has. And I may use he as well. I don't mean to do that, but it's just part of my vernacular, if you will. But I will say that they do listen to that, and they actually use those experts to actually help them make decisions and empower those that are on their team, because there's a lot of things going on in the PM world. They need to rely on those and not feel like they need to have all the answers. Obviously, from a money standpoint, being a former owner and an executive at Adams Group, we need to be good budget managers, right? And risk evaluators. So that is a huge part of their job. And the more that they don't stand on the mountaintop saying they know every millwork detail and design, the more they can focus on that budget management. I need less of that expertise and more of the budget management, if you will. And then finally, creating those schedules, holding the GCs accountable, identifying those milestones, really driving home the schedule. So quick recap is communication, consistency. We rely on our experts, we're budget managers, and we are scheduled drivers. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's a great list. And more specifically, I think there's probably a lot of people that do work in the industry and have experience in this industry that are listening to this kind of as cynics and jaded of, man, that sounds like an amazing project manager if you can find somebody who does all those things. And I'd say that unfortunately it is all too common, but also the industry is very broad. And there are a lot of different companies that are of varying sizes. And so as you mentioned earlier, we're talking about some specific definitions of these roles that really are probably more applicable to the larger, more established companies in this industry. However, in the smaller companies, really all that changes is that there's maybe one person doing multiple of these roles. But historically speaking, a lot of times the people that are filling that role as project manager are probably the most experienced, and a lot of times they probably would consider themselves experts, right? Like, right. Hey, they're the ones that are going to inform the design, inform the engineering, inform the manufacturing. And would you say that that is a sign of the past, like the way things used to be, that they shouldn't be that way? Is that a small shop mentality? Is that, and I'm putting kind of words in your mouth, but a lot of people listening are probably thinking that, hey, how do we find what John's talking about as what a project manager should be versus what I've experienced in my company?
Yeah. So that's a great question. Again, I have come from companies of all sizes, right? All the way down to a couple million up to 200 million, right? So I've seen the gamut. And my recentivity is more large scale. I will say that, and it's easier for me to segregate those roles, if you will, in these larger companies. I was a project manager doing it all. The best thing I could do, though, is give the responsibility to those experts. So if you do have a drafting and engineering team, empower them, if you will, to become those. They will grow with that as well. A lot of those guys are usually shy or quieter. They're not used to going in front of people and stating their case or demanding that things happen a certain way. And so I would strongly suggest, if you have the dynamic where the project manager isn't the engineer, you offload some of that. I really think the future to a project manager is to be a salesperson for the next job. If you're doing everything right, you're making money to keep the company going, right, in the current state, but you're really setting forth a future for the future state. And doing those 5 things, as much as you need to be a millwork expert if you're in a small company, doing those 5 things will get you there in the future.
No, absolutely. And I think that makes a lot of sense, in being devil's advocate a little bit here. But a lot of times I do think project managers also get pigeonholed into people expecting them to be the experts. I think of it a lot of, I have an architecture background, and people have this mindset of an architect is supposed to know everything about everything, right? And a lot of times they probably profess to, but the reality is a good architect on a large project is really just a good project manager, right? They need to know just enough to know what experts they need to be consulting, and that they're orchestrating all of these subject matter experts to yield that net result that the client is asking for. And it's the same thing in this case, is they need to be a manager first of that project. And that includes, managing trades and really your internal experts as well as the external. So internally, that might be, like you said, referencing and talking to your engineering or drafting leaders, talking to production, and really just saying, okay, here's who needs to be involved in these decisions, and how do we get those people to the table and make sure that we're executing all of this on the schedule and the budget that the client's expecting.
Perfectly said. And the visual that came to mind as you were talking, and I use this often, is like the PMs are more like the center of a spoke of a wheel. Imagine like a bicycle wheel on that center spoke. They're trying to bring information that is coming to them or away from them, and they're trying to bring those people together at that center point and letting those people connect. Hey, what do you need? How do you need to get this information? As long as the project manager does that, you'll have success. You just got to allow the ability to have the 2 spokes talking to each other to come to a solution that you agree with, that's on budget and on schedule. That's really the intersection point, if you will, for the project manager. But well said.
In that, so you've outlined kind of 5 main things, and obviously there's a lot more that could dive into this, but in your experience, because you've inherited project managers, you've hired project managers, you've been a project manager, what are some of the, of those 5, where do you find you have to focus the most time in developing or coaching people?
That's great. Because usually, I think you said it, is that usually the project managers, the knowledge base and grows into it, and they have that history of woodworking, if you will. Where I tend to struggle mostly that I see is those, they might not be the best communicators, or they might not be the best budget managers. That's usually 2 parts of that equation, is that they know how to build something really well. They know how it goes together, but they might spend a fortune to get it done, right? Or they know how to do it, and they just rather do it themselves and communicate a better plan to go execute and create a roadmap, if you will. So that's usually where I struggle. You could teach things like schedule management. There's software, there's other things that help guide you through that. The listening is really a trait. You shouldn't have them on your team if they're not a good team player. And then obviously consistency can be just gained over time. There is probably some of that. So there's some traits there, but I will say that budget and, that schedule management, if you will.
Awesome. And so within that, obviously, we're talking specifically about, how do engineers and PMs work together effectively? But I think it's important. We've laid a bit of the groundwork of, what is the context of what should a PM do? And as we're talking about this, that's the role we're talking about of what makes a good PM. So you outline here also communication, and within that, drilling in a little bit to that, what are some of the kind of methods, whether it be processes or tools or things that usually come to mind with communication, and how you coach and manage your team to communicate effectively?
I agree. I think diving into these with your viewers' mindset in mind would be the next step. And then really giving you guys some tips on what to do, takeaways on how to go home with this information, because that's usually where you struggle. Is, oh, this all sounds great. You built, I think you said, Jacob, this perfect PM, but how do I take something tomorrow? So obviously communication is really centered around like if the PM's ability to anticipate things before they happen is the best response that you can expect to see out of your PM. If that PM is not anticipating what's going to happen and just reacting to it, we've got a problem on our hands. And that's usually where the frustration builds. And so really like thinking, again, I'm going to split this off into two things, just like I set up, is drafting and engineering. This means a clean set of drawings are given to you before you ever start, right? Like it's gone through its scope, anything's X'd out, it's taken some extra care, if you will, and is put out there. They're trying to anticipate all the things that you might come across before you ever come across them. How many times of a PM that your listeners have dealt with doesn't even think that they've looked at the drawings at all? Like they know the good ones, and the good ones are going through it. From an engineering focus in our world, again, post-process or near processing, post-approval, that means really all the RFIs that have changed that from the start to now are documented correctly, and that it is accessible for your team to get to. So it's that clear communication that this changed, here's the new directive, please proceed with this. It also means getting clear field dimensions that are written down for them in a consistent way that isn't on 10 different, I'm not looking for data on 10 different documents. I'm centralizing it all to one, and they're taking that time to make your job the most efficient, right? It's that spoke of that wheel, if you will, and putting all that information together. Those two intersections of RFI and engineering need to meet. So I will say that is that. So that all sounds good, but what do we do with that? I'd really challenge your listeners to start writing, really identifying what works for your company. Again, scale is a part of the equation here, but really make sure all your managers, assuming you have multiple, are doing it similarly every single time. You don't want to get it from Joey one way and Bobby and Sue another way. It's not the way that is going to make anybody successful. You guys can drive that more than you guys think. You are a customer of them, and you can set expectations to say, hey, I need it this way. I would also suggest this is a world that things are happening fast. Architectural drawings are not as clean as they used to be back in my day. I sound old at this point, but things are changing. And I would say that given the ability to have that web-based, live, whatever you want to call it, that I can get this information while I'm on site or even at home or wherever, traveling on the road, to get it to the team that I know that they're going to see it. So web-based services are all over there for drawing management, file management, all that stuff. But you need a way to get that ability to get that information into a centralized location. So there's, again, Jacob criticizes me. I might have a plan grid. I might as well have a plan grid polo on because he criticizes me for that. Obviously, I'm a big believer of, it's still plan grid to me, but it's technically called Autodesk Construction Cloud now. I'm an energy user as well, and Teams. Those are great services that are out there that we use at Adams Group that I'll dive into later.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. And your first point of specifically engineers and drafters have more say than I think they feel they do. I think there's probably a lot of people that are going to be listening to this initially defensively of, oh, great, now we get to hear a project manager talk about what project managers want, what they should do. But in their experience, hey, they're slackers, right? And I have a blog post about this, and this is what I consult all of my engineering managers on, is the first step in what I outline as my 6 kind of step method on managing is defining your inputs. And that involves literally, we've done this together in the past of, okay, what do I need? What does my team need? What do my drafters need from the organization, from project management, to successfully deliver what they need from us? And go to them with, hey, look, I need X, Y, and Z. I need the most up-to-date architecturals. I need the up-to-date specs. I need a clear scope. And you can push back and say, and given that, say within your experience, I think a lot of people think, well, I'm going to get pushback, or I can say I need this, but it doesn't happen. You being one responsible for those project managers, like how welcome is that to project management to have outlined, hey, here's exactly the formula that we need to give you what you want. That's what project managers want, right?
It's 100%. And again, you'll meet resistance at first because now they've got the control, or they've typically had the control. Now they've lost it. It may take one time for you to kick it back to them, and they'll get frustrated with you. But at the same time, like, those expectations are what they want. They have checklists in their heads, and they just want the thing off the checklist to move to the other thing. I'm going to say that probably a few times today, but give them the checklist of what needs to be done, and you'll have more success. And it's easier for them to go ask the questions that you need, and it's outlined for them to be like, hey, I need this and this. If you don't, project managers love to tell the customer when they can't get them the information, because it's usually the other way around, right?
Right.
You're always late. You're always behind. You're always this. Turning the tables is a powerful thing for any organization at this point. So the engineering team is a huge proponent of that. And right now at Adams Group, we put those restrictions in. We have to have X, Y, and Z in order for us to process it. And if X and Y are not done, or even X, I'm sorry, it's got to be done before we can release it on our lead times. And it's working.
Right.
So.
Absolutely. The second piece I wanted to highlight is that you're advocating and basically saying, hey, from project management standpoint, like, I'm advocating for software, and software that costs money, right? These aren't necessarily free. And so also being the team that's responsible for the project budgets, right? Like, generally, like, project managers are thinking, okay, how do I can preserve budget? But you're making a conscious decision through experience that, hey, if we invest in these tools, this is going to yield and net a better result for us. So talk a little bit about that, because I think most organizations are probably not used to project managers saying, hey, we should use this software. It's usually probably engineering or somebody else pushing for technical solutions, right?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I outlined my three favorites, but it's funny. I was flying here to Louisville today. As Jacob said, I'm here for an AWI, I teach an AWI conference, but I was mobile. Today I had my iPad, and I had PlanGrid or Autodesk Construction Cloud on it. And I was able to do an SOV billing through the processes that we built around, I'm going to keep calling it PlanGrid, sorry, ACC PlanGrid. I was able to see what was done from our field team through some stamping process that we built inside of there. That crossover now helped me on billing side, which is a crazy joinery of two different departments at accounting now, and my software that does drawings. Like, how do those two things connect? We use PlanGrid for a lot of things, drawing management, different things. There's Procore out there. There's some others. I strongly recommend you get some sort of cloud-based drawing application. It saves you 100 times over. Even if it's something like Bluebeam Studio, like, those will save you thousands of dollars over the course of the year and pay themselves. No questions asked. There's probably a whole podcast on stuff like that I'm sure you're working on. Obviously, energy is near and dear to my heart. We helped create it. Gosh, it's maybe been 10 years ago. I'm not 100% sure. Feels like forever. Obviously, that helps me with the budgeting side, scheduling side, some of those other things. But they actually have a built-in drawing platform as well that is helpful for our drafting team to really know what is in and out of scope. It's very clear inside of there. And even things like Teams or some sort of chat mechanism that you guys are centrally locating communication. I constantly am drilling into my team that it's the hey, use, or hey, go do this, and it's yelled over the wall to the team. Those got to stop at some point. And I've seen it happen a million times. We have the discussions during the drafting phase of, hey, go do this. And then we go to build it. And it's like, why the heck did you do that? It was never documented. So strongly think we use a team chat thread for those discussions. While it may be hard to find that one thing, at least it's a CYA a little bit for those team members. So those are my three favorites. There's many more. 100% agree that software is a huge investment that anybody out there should take. Yep.
You touched on something there that I think is also important, was that documenting decisions that were made throughout the process. Because in our business, the life cycle of a job, a project manager is managing multiple jobs depending on the scale, and those jobs each have their own life cycle that can span months or even years, right? And so although it's the project manager's job to know that job and manage everything, there are going to be things that aren't hey, oh yeah, I remember exactly, we had this conversation, I had this. And so that's where documentation, both for the project manager and both for everybody else in the organization is important, right? And so I think that's important because I'm always an advocate of your drawings are your tool for communication. And so first that's, hey, let's get all the information on the drawings at submittal stage as much as possible. But even after that, there can be decisions made in red lines and things that you can use these tools you're talking about to document those decisions in turn. It can be whether you use Procore or Bluebeam or PlanGrid or Energy's tools. Okay, do you have a centralized system for, hey, this is the working set of drawings, and here's where we're going to mark up. Okay, we got approved as noted red lines, but there's then, what are we doing about those red lines? So might be, we had a impromptu conversation. How do you document that? How should people be pushing towards making sure that, hey, I remember we had this conversation, that CYA that you mentioned.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I put that I wrap that in with good budget managers because honestly, I'm using your red line example. It hit me today as I was thinking about some of our discussions today. And those red line things are tricky. These architects are sneaky now. And I think they do this intentionally to be unclear and then red line it. And then they get away with murder sometimes. Documenting those, finding change order opportunities is really the opportunity for a project manager to grow their budget, grow their revenue, grow their margin at the same time. But we just use simple things inside of PlanGrid that just every marking gets a stamp that either says, I'm okay with this needs a change order, and don't proceed until I get approval on that, or I don't know what they're trying to say, I need to go question it. If you can mark those things in your red lines using software of some sort, even if it's a PDF version, as long as that PDF version lives all the way through, you got to start doing that today. And that could be part of that SOP that we talked about as an expectation, if you will, from your team that says, I got to have these things. Those are easy things for you to do, and it forces some behaviors inside of your PM team. Yeah.
Awesome. No, I think that's huge. And I think in general, SOPs is very important for everybody in the organization, but especially between project management and engineers. They're constantly interacting. And a lot of times I find that engineers become the documenters of an organization, and they're usually the ones that are behind the scenes keeping tabs on everything. And usually they have systems that they create unofficially, but push those out in the open and say, hey, can this become the SOP, or can we create something together? Because this will help us. And generally I find that they're doing it anyways, but more of, hey, let me just CYA for myself.
You're right. It's so funny you say that, because I was on a rampage at USA Millwork about all the side sheets, right, that everybody was keeping. And I'm a visual management kind of guy. Bring it to the visual and we will fix the problem. You got good ideas. These things need to be tracked. You're just probably scared that you're going to upset somebody or you're overstepping your bounds. Those things need to be brought up in order for the whole organization to get better. So you hit the nail right on the head. I think that is important 100%. And you should feel brave enough to say something or do something.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about some of the misconceptions, because we're talking a lot about, okay, how can project managers and engineers work well together? But I want to talk a little bit about the elephant in the room, which is that, one, there's a lot of engineers out here saying, my PMs will never do any of that, or my PMs suck, or they're lazy, or they're just sitting in their car hiding from work, or all the kind of stereotypes. But what are some of the misconceptions that a lot of times engineers don't know about what it is to be a PM?
Yeah, that's a good one, because it's been a long time since I've been an engineer, so I'm probably biased and skewed on some of these thoughts, but I hear the things like their job's way too easy, they're having too much fun, they're going and doing all the fun stuff, they're going to the fishing tournament, shooting things, all those other things, which is true. Again, think of them as salesmen for the company. Like they need to go sell that next job, so some of that is there, right? But also know that they're standing on the front lines taking a lot of heat for the organization's failure, the remakes that your department might have caused, just material delays, all these different things. They are standing in front of that firing squad for the entire company. And that's not always easy. It takes a certain approach. And there's just a lot of stress around that, if you will. I'm just saying that these guys don't go home and their job shuts off, right? Their phone's still ringing. There's a lot of different things going on. It starts early in the morning, those types of things. The other thing is, it's when people claim it's easy, it's not task-based and I can't see it on a work order list or a grid or something. It just doesn't go to A to B to C to D, right? I'm jumping in a bunch of different directions as a project manager so that easy quotient is very misguided. It may seem lighter at times that I'm not grinding through this next work order or getting this cut list out because it has to get to the shop floor. I got to, depending on your company size, $1,000 or $1 million decision that I need to make, and that stress carries with you. So yeah. Another thing that I hear commonly is, man, they just take forever to answer, right? I never get quick enough responses. While it can be true and it could be them just not getting to it, they are most likely prioritizing a lot of those different same requests, not necessarily from your department, but from others as well. So have some understanding that they might be dealing with an issue that gets ACA inspections for a hospital tomorrow that might delay them to the answer on the red lines that doesn't go till next year, right? They're just trying their best to prioritize it. They're getting information from designers, owners, contractors, other trades, all that information, and they're doing their best to prioritize those and get them answered. Now, do they want reminders? 100% yes, and it sounds ridiculous, but don't be afraid to remind them, because a lot of times the pile just keeps stacking on and they might actually forget about that last one.
Yep.
And then honestly, I will say this, and I touched on a little bit, is there's always a pay thing, right? It's always about pay. Like, they always get paid way more than me. If you really think about it, and I've done this many times and I'm guilty of it myself, is that if you really calculate their pay per hour that they're working, they're not hourly like a lot of our members on your podcast listeners are. If you calculate that, they could be making less than you by the hours that they're putting in. Now, all that being equal, there's other perks and all these other things. I'm not going to ignore any of that, but just be aware that it is a full-time, all the time, weekends, nights, all those different things. So,
yeah. And I don't know that everybody has this context, but I would say PMs, that role in this industry probably has the highest turnover rate of any role in this industry. And I think that because of that it is because of the high stress, I think it's a very difficult job to be very good at. It's very rare to have good PMs that are very good at it. I think it's very common and possibly even easy to be a bad PM. And there's a lot of companies out there that allow bad PMs to stay PMs, and owners or leaders pick up the slack and project manage a lot themselves. And so I think because of that, PMs like as a whole get a bad rap, because there's a lot of bad PMs out there. And I don't think it's necessarily that they're bad PMs. And this is the industry as a whole. This is just me on my soapbox, but there's not enough coaching and not enough good management in general in this industry. And so there's not enough people, leaders, developing and saying, hey, this is what a good PM needs to do in an organization. And these are the skills, these are the tools we're going to equip you. And it's too much of just, hey, I just need somebody to basically, a lot of the times a PM is basically a barrier for the owner to just shield a lot of that noise. And hey, let you be the first barrier, and the only thing that gets past you is the stuff that's really decisions that you need me to make, and I'll take the problems. That's what it ends up being a lot of the time. And so what we're talking about today is what that should look like, not necessarily what it does look like in a lot of organizations. And so I think that's important for people to understand, is that if you're listening to this and thinking, man, if only it could be that, there's a path out of that. And you might not necessarily feel like you're in a position of influence to accomplish that. But even if it's just, hey, share this podcast with your owner, share it with your project managers. Like, a lot of these people are trying their best and they're just not equipped to do the job they've been asked to do.
Yeah, I agree with you. And we actually had that discussion right before this as our executive team got together. We're in an organization called C12. It's a Christian leadership group. And our topic, it's a nationwide group. And our topic was building up those second tier leaders, if you will. And project managers definitely fall in that. And it's really important for us to empower them as well to grow in their leadership and give them the tools that they need. Oftentimes, you're absolutely right. I'll be honest with you. Right now, I'm stuck in the mud with all the things you just described. I got stuck there. We made some decisions to help our engineering team and moved one of our project managers over as this bridge position. That move allowed a hole in our project management team that I'm now filling, right? It's an unfortunate temporary short term, but I'm not allowing myself to build my team like I should, or they're expecting me to. And it's showing it, and there's some frustration definitely growing. And it's through that I'm realizing, man, me as a leader and your owner or your boss or your PM's boss, if you will, need to be taking the time, not just filling in the gaps that their PM did, really build them to who they are. And taking those 5 key things that I brought up in the first half of this podcast and start with some of those and just really focus on what are those 5 is your PM lacking on? And let's dive in. There's plenty of things out there from AWI. Jacob has a lot of good information. I read a lot of his blogs and posts. He's got a lot of good information that you can see it from a different department's perspective. I know Energy has a lot of lunch and learn and type of things. So there's a lot of stuff out there for you to become better at your job. You just got to go find it and invest the time. And your owner's got to be okay with investing time. It's, hey, how do I take, for example, C12 takes a day out of my month every month, but it's allowing me to be a better leader to my team. It's really resetting that mindset, if you will, then getting out of the weeds in the job, the day to day, and say, all right, now you're here to focus on your team. What do we need to do different?
No, that makes a lot of sense. And so I guess drilling into that more to give our listeners something tangible, what are some, when you're in that firefighting mode of just like, where do I even start? What are some things that like you yourself usually start with? Okay, where do I got to start digging out and plugging some holes, or the blocking and tackling, whatever kind of metaphor you like to use, analogy. What does that look like? And what are some of the places you recommend people starting with?
Yeah, I think it's just it's listening for the problems. Again, it's listening with different ears is what I would say. So in the meetings that we're in, or you're hearing chatter through the office or whatever, you start to pick up on things if you're starting to listen to where the gaps are. And so as a leader in an organization, I challenge all the people to say, let's start listening for the gaps, and you're going to quickly find them. Now it's an idea of doing that for a week. You're going to find a lot of gaps, and you're going to realize, oh my gosh, we got a lot of things to work on. There's all these things. It's really what it is. I want to say a short-term win. Find a short-term win to gain momentum first. Find something easy that you can cross the finish line. Don't start with your biggest task that's we got to completely redo XYZ, right? Let's not start there because it's going to burn your team out. You get these short-term wins, dangle some longer-term goals out there. What we're doing right now as an organization is really setting quarter-long goals for our team that we're really where we see the problems, right? So that's an EOS model that we're using. We call it an AGOS. So it's an Adams Group operating system, but we've tweaked it a little bit for what works for us. But there's a lot of good tools on an EOS. The book called Traction is out there as well that we're modeling that after with some of our agendas and goal setting, rocks, those types of things. And so really what it's doing is it's hyper focusing us on one thing at a time, because we've tend to struggle in the past of starting too many things at once, right? And so really we got to try to narrow that down. The team does not focus as much as I want to. And you probably saw this at USA Millwork. I would start a lot of things at once and we wouldn't get very far. I'm guilty of that wherever I go, and I'm guilty of that here. The executive team realized that, man, these are all great ideas, right? But we need to do one at a time. So that's what I would challenge you guys to say. Get your team together as an engineering or a drafting team and say, what's the biggest thing that we can tackle this quarter? And it has to be done that quarter. Like, you put time constraints on it and say, this is what needs to happen. Find short-term wins inside of that to get to that goal. You will gain momentum and people get excited. You evoke change. You announce it to the company to say, hey, here's what our team did. You guys can do that without any formal rollout with your guys' company. Again, read the book Traction, get some guidelines. There's a lot of tools and tips inside of there. I'd say 100% go down that road. That's a way to start.
Yeah. So for people that aren't familiar, EOS, I think it's Entrepreneurial Operating System. Google it, look it up. Traction is a great book, but there are implementers and there's a lot of companies. Actually, we have a lot of our clients with Ductworks use that system. It's a great system. More on your advice to engineers, I think that's very key in focusing on one thing at a time. And a lot of times, especially when engineers get in their engineer mindset, I'm one of them, right? Of, hey, look, there's all this stuff that's wrong. We need UPMs to do all these things. Look at all these little nitty gritty things, right, that you're doing wrong that we need you to do. And nothing gets fixed. And I think if you want change, it's, okay, what I would usually recommend to my team is, okay, I see your 10 things. Now you get to pick one of those things that we focus on first, right? What is the thing that's going to make the most impact? If this quarter we can fix that and make that problem no longer on your list. We're not ignoring the others, but we're saying, hey, let's start somewhere. And so if you're an engineering manager, or if you're just an engineer and you're thinking like, man, look at all this stuff that, hey, I want my project managers to be doing what Jacob and John are talking about tomorrow. It doesn't happen overnight. So the thing you can do to best help is, hey, how can you narrow in and say, we talked about at the beginning, defining your inputs. Can you also define for them, hey, if you could just do this one thing, this would really help us and make an impact. And then you build on that.
Yeah, no, I agree. And again, I'm going to go back to my 5 keys. If you're talking about the weeds and it's around microvellum processing procedure, like that's maybe important. But if you're really wanting PM input, that may be something that you need to work to Q3 or 4 is a different goal. If you want PMs to act different and that's your biggest pain point, try to go around those 5 things I said, and that you'll have their buy-in because now you're speaking their language. Make sure that you guys do cross. It is sometimes like we're talking to different people in different countries. Oftentimes it's like, hey, I don't understand what you're trying to tell me. Just be clear. Talk budget. You start throwing in things like, hey, this will help your budget. Now all of a sudden there's interest and I'm now invested and I'll play the game with you and be more apt to do that. If you're saying it just sounds like more work, you're going to probably get a shoulder and maybe a finger. I'm not sure.
Yes. I think that's good. I think that's a good topic to drill into a little bit as well, is specifically budget, because one, there's probably a lot of companies that where engineers and even PMs aren't even thinking about budget, or it's not really a common topic of discussion. And a lot of companies still, budget and dollars and cents are 4-letter words. You don't talk about them publicly in the company. But in the context of what we're talking about, what a project manager is supposed to do is ultimately be that manager of that budget. And really first and foremost, obviously, is executing what the customer's paid for, which I think is important that people hear that statement and not what they're envisioning, which is a lot of people take it as the best quality possible. And a lot of what I will say is bad PMs, a lot of bad PMs will basically just give the client whatever they want, right?
Yep.
But I think a lot of people, engineers in particular, but people in just millwork don't understand this side of what a PM's job is, which is managing that budget. And a lot of times that means they have to be telling people internally, no. Yeah. Hey, this might be easier for you, but this is not going to, we don't have the budget for that material, for that vendor, for this installer to do this. We need you to do it in the shop. How can, organizations, one, better understand like what that means and how important that is to just the entire business, everybody?
Yep. Yeah, I will say you hit the nail on the head. I think engineers by nature and drafters by nature don't feel they are so disconnected what happens in the estimating world that there's multiple layers in between them, so they don't matter. I see it the completely opposite, is that they are the biggest inputters of information that's going to make that estimator better next time. And again, I call it the feedback loop, if you will, to be like, we need that feedback to go to estimating. If they don't know, they're not going to change anything. For example, your PM is going to give you a work order that only has 5 hours of engineering time to get 2 days worth of work done. What does an engineer typically do with that information? I cannot believe that they did that. I'm going to go over budget, yada, yada, yada. It's the why that you need to feed that back to them to make them understand. And it goes to the project manager and be like, I either get it or, yeah, you're just really slow. One of those two things are going to happen, and that feedback goes back to estimating. Now, estimating may say, hey, we can't sell the jobs for that. How do we do this better, more efficiently? I understand. And maybe it's to your point that maybe we're over-engineering it altogether, right? Did the customer actually pay for this? And I'm going to pick on drafting. Like oftentimes we put things in our drawings the customer's not paying for, right? Now, if it makes downstream more efficient, 100% that evaluation should be done inside of your company. But let's not just put lines on paper just because we're putting lines on paper. Again, I know every company does it differently, but horizontal cross sections of cabinets, right? Showing the run of cabinets. That's a traditional way of showing cabinets. Is that what the customer paid for? Or do they just really want a 3D rendering at the right color? I'm saying some extreme polar opposites here, but knowing your customer, your details, all those different things, hopefully your company is evaluating that. And margin, higher margin goes with higher detail. And again, maybe your company or you don't know what the margin is. Ask your PM, like, how did we sell this job? Are we making a good profit on this? They'd be happy to share that with you. I think from a project manager's expectation standpoint, what your listeners should really expect is a clear, defined version of how much dollars, right? If that's the way your company does, how much dollars are in as a whole, but that's to me not good enough. I'm going to pick on a work order for a minute. Say work order 1 has $1,000 cost budget. Okay, great. I can't spend more than $1,000, but what's my chunk of engineering time? That should be a known thing. If your company doesn't have that, it needs to, because there's no way to forecast or schedule manage or all those different things that your company should be doing to grow. They need to start doing that. So start with something easy and give them feedback to be like, no, of that $1,000 budget, I took $100, and that's way over what you probably are doing for me. They should really give you the material budget, like in detail as much as they can, right? Not just a cabinet is costing us $300. How do we get to that $300? Start asking those questions so you guys can do that. Again, challenge your estimating team to give them more detail. And again, there's software, there's other things. Even Excel can do a lot of this to an extent and give you an example. That's what I would say on the budget side. From an engineering side, it's really estimated hours by when, right? Those are really budgets. There's going to be a cost impact possibly from my customer if you don't get this done by this date. Not only in these hours, but by this date, it could have cost impact. So understanding that. So what do we do? How do we deal with that, right? What are some of the tips and tricks that we can walk out of here today? I would say walk through with your estimate. Understand what your estimate is. A lot of drafters and engineers don't even know what the estimate looks like. Ask for your next job and say, hey, do you got any details on this estimate that I'd be willing to see? Take it home at night. Don't do that on the clock, but just evaluate it and see what information is there that you think the PM is looking for. I'd say that. From there, you need you guys to hold a submittal meeting so you guys know what is expected from a budgetary time and date management, if you will. That is critical. If your team's not having that handoff meeting to set those expectations, not just details, I don't want to just go over the details. I should have a path as a project manager on how much time is going to take by when. I would also say from an engineering standpoint, we really need to have a quick intersection point before we purchase the material to say, hey, is this material changed? I know you took it off and the drawing showed it this way. Let's have a quick material meeting to just make sure that nothing's different. And then make a simple spreadsheet that has your budget in as much detail as your estimate does. How did that compare? Now, that's a lot of work for a lot of companies. I get it. But spot check a few here and there. Don't do every single one, but just grab one a week and start looking at it. And to me, that's what an engineering manager's role is, trying to make sure that he's setting his team up for success, but he also has to get information correctly to be able to do that. So does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. No, I think that's key. So and on your tips and tricks, I think definitely you mentioned holding a submittal meeting and a couple other milestones. So if we're thinking about how can project manager speak of, okay, here, what are the buzzwords or like the things that are important? You obviously schedule, budget, and then certain milestones of, okay, everything that affects a couple of those things, schedule and budget, are really the things that are going to like raise the eyebrows of your PM, right? So if you're coming to your PM and saying, oh, I'm waiting on this question, a lot of times that doesn't really mean anything. It goes in one ear and out the other. And if a PM is saying, okay, if what you're asking me, is it going to affect my schedule or my budget? If it doesn't trigger that, they're, hey, low on the priority list. I've got 12 other things I'm thinking of right now. Yeah. And I know this is like, we're defending PMs, bad PMs, right? But it's important to understand your audience in communication. And that's what you started with, 100%. Is being good communicators. So I think it's key to think that way of, okay, how can I speak to the concerns of the project, which is what the PM should be concerned about. And that is whatever issue I need help from the PM on, whether it's an email or a phone call or a message of, hey, I need this information by this time. Otherwise, I won't be able to hit your schedule of this date. Those 100%. Are like red flag. PM is going to respond. And this is also really advice for PMs, and this is how they should be talking to their GCs. And so what you're doing as an engineer or anybody in the organization by equipping the PM with that information is telling them, hey, here's what I need, and here's the consequences if I don't get it. Yep. And that also gives them the same information to pass along to the client. And this should start from the submittal meeting of, okay, we're having a handoff. The client wants shop drawings in 4 weeks, 2 weeks, whatever it is, right? You should be able to come as engineering manager or engineer and say, okay, I'm missing X, Y, or Z, but as long as I have this by tomorrow. Set some real parameters, and that equips the PM to be able to go and say to the client, hey, I need this by here to give you what you want. But you have to frame it in what they want. Otherwise, it doesn't matter to them. And it's the same thing for your PM.
Keep in mind, and that's a perfect example, keep in mind the communication they get is RFIs, ASIs, the exact same language. I need this by this date. And they speak that language. And if you're not, then it is just background noise to them, just like anything else that's going on. I'm sitting in these contractor meetings, I'm listening to all this thing, but it's all background noise until millwork, casework comes up, and then I perk my ears up, right? It's the same kind of thing. So yep. I agree with you completely. And the other thing I'm gonna rebound to is that feedback loop. You guys have a united enemy and an estimator, right? And so if you guys get that information and you guys can say, hey, this isn't enough budget for this, let's make sure that we've done all the things and we're as efficient as possible. I want to make sure that we're clear and not throwing stones where they don't need to be thrown. But that feedback loop back to the estimator, be like, man, we got this problem and this is how this is going. That will start getting their attention. Now you're speaking their language, which is very closely tied to the owner. And that's when things start happening, right?
Something else on that I think is important for people that haven't either estimated or haven't managed a budget on a job, probably don't have this context. But I think a lot of times engineers start out with that mindset of, okay, I've got this work order and the PM gave me this budget that I know I can't hit. And then they go straight from that to it's impossible, so why even try? And it's important to understand that a couple things. One, estimating is just that. It is basically somebody estimating, really trying to figure out, like, as best we can, do we think we can make money on this job at X price? Yeah. And they're trying to obviously get more and more fine. But a lot of companies is really that their estimates are really that simple. Hey, we sold it for this and we think we can make this much money. And so what's important to understand is that once you're at that stage where it's hitting you in engineering, the price is the price. Yep. The company has signed a contract, and all it really says on the contract in simplest terms is the GC is going to pay us this much for this product. It doesn't matter the budget anymore. Like, you guys have to deliver that, whether you make money on it or not. So I think understanding from that, working backwards is, okay, how can we preserve as much margin as possible? And so I think it's important that everybody understands, okay, when we're talking about margin, that's not profit. Margin is how the company, so the only way most millwork companies make money is on these contracts. They sell a millwork contract that pays a certain amount of money, usually a long time after the work is done. Yep. And so the way they keep the doors open is the margin on a job. So we get paid $1 million for this job. It costs us in labor and materials X. The money that's left over between X and the contract is your margin. And that's how you pay everything from your rent to your electricity to your salaries of your indirect labor. A lot of terms that maybe not make sense, but the important part to understand is that your project managers are responsible for preserving margin, which is a portion of every project that basically goes to paying everything else for the business. All feeds into that. And once you understand that, then you can start speaking the language of your PM and saying, hey, look, I'm trying to help you do your job, which is preserving budget and hitting your schedule. And so now I'm going to speak of it. It doesn't really matter that 10 hours on this work order isn't enough. What matters is the big picture and how do we get as close to that as possible. And then at the end of the job, using that information to make sure that we don't end up in this situation again. That's the feed loop you're talking about. Understands the big picture of what a budget is.
Yeah, and I agree with you completely. I will say the price is the price. You're absolutely right. And again, my executive role, I'm taking off my PM hat for a minute. My executive role is focused more around how do we forecast that and know when the plane is full, using the plane analogy, if you will. So I will say the micro level needs to be added up to know that, and we need to be as close to cost as we can get. But you're absolutely right. Your job is to preserve margin. I use this quick analogy that kind of makes sense. The AWI average shop is making anywhere from 3 to 7% net profit after that overhead that Jacob was talking about, indirect costs, that overhead, whatever. And that is astounding to me that really off of $10 of sales, let's just use 10%, right? Just for quick, easy math. Off of $10 of sales, they net $1. For every remake dollar that you spend, we have to then make up that $10 in other things. So it's just mind blowing how quickly this money can go away and how hard it is to keep, right? And so it's an amazing little tool that I use with my team often, is being like, man, that remake, it doesn't sound like that's that bad of a deal, but that's money we could have had in our pocket. And now we got to go sell X times more revenue to go make up that loss. And for us, we have a goal of 10%, just like every other good investor should have with his money. And so that is our goal. And we track and stick to a lot of that stuff. So
awesome. I feel like we can and probably should do a whole other episode just on that, on estimating, on budgets and stuff. And I know we could fill another hour. But in respect to time, is there anything that we didn't touch on that you feel is important to share with our listeners on the topic of?
I think we covered a lot. I have a lot of notes. I have a lot more very detailed tips and tricks, and maybe I'll give those to Jacob for a kind of a follow-up to this podcast. I can share some notes with him on just things that we're doing that might just be a good takeaway for you to do. A lot of these, I'm here at this AWI teaching event, and a lot of times, like, where I gain value in a lot of this is getting information on how other people do it. Oh, that sounds like a simple idea. I never thought of it. There's a lot of those that we kind of circle around engineering and drafting and some of the things that we're doing. Some of them are just hole pluggers, like kind of put your finger in the dam. And then some of them are more like boulders. And we're saying these are huge for us to be doing. And it's critical that we do it. I feel like I touched on the critical. There's a lot of the holes that could be plugged with other ideas that your listeners can take. Like I said, feel free to reach out to me, Jacob. I know he and I think a lot alike. And so he probably has the ideas as well as we share common solution, problem solution type of.
Awesome. How, on that note, how can people, if they want to reach out and ask you some other questions, or if they want to find out about Adams Group, how can they reach out or find you?
Yeah, there's lots of different ways, mostly LinkedIn, John VanErem. I think Jacob will do the spelling of that because it's Dutch. Our website, discoveradams.com. I can tell you a little bit about Adams Group and what we're doing. Again, some of my favorites, PlanGrid, Energy, those types of things are resources that we're using. Ductworks is a great resource for us as well. I do love what Jacob's doing over there. And I think the content that is being shared is right on point to where a lot of companies are being challenged with in today's world. A lot of our leaders are struggling with what is coming at them when what they have. A lot of these owners are in their 30th year, let's say, when things were good. And the workforce is different than it was today, even in my time from when I started to where it is today. And we've got to adapt the best we can. We got to adapt to technology. We got to adapt to the remote style of workforce that is out there. That is a real thing that we have today. And as much as we want to fight against it in our stereotypical industry, we have to embrace it. And those that do reap the benefits of that margin gain tenfold. It is something that needs to be done. I do worry about our industry a lot. I worry about the impact that kids coming out of high school today have in just that side of that blue collar work, if you will, and the misconceptions, I think, of our industry. I think everybody can attest to that has some sort of any single piece of automation in their shop. When they bring people in for a shop tour, they're blown away. And the more that you have of that we just need to get those words out. So please, my beg to you is visit your local high school boards and keep shop class involved. That's how I'm here. And I will stand on that. I will say, get out to your colleges and see what other trades are out there. Even if it's a trade, carpentry, all the way down to welding, whatever it is, like those guys can transfer and transition into this. We are losing that every single day. And I worry about that moving forward. So those are my closing thoughts, if you will. But I love what we do. I love the friendships that we made. There's good people in this industry, and I wouldn't be the person I am without a lot of the people I've connected with and just bounced ideas off of. Jacob is definitely one of them. And I love the idea and the brainstorming and the creativity that comes from having those people around you. I get involved in AWI. I could stand on my soapbox forever, Jacob. You have to knock me out, but get involved in AWI is another good one in your local chat.
Yeah. On that topic, you're at a seminar right now. So who are the type of people that are there, and how can somebody find out more if they want to do that?
Yeah. So there is AWI puts on a few different seminars. I think they're actually investigating the drafting and estimating module. So they're actually thinking about having it housed at an area. And maybe that's something, Jacob, you can help get involved in. I'll put your name in if you want me to. I got the education directors here. But they have three that are financial management, project management, and estimating. And I'm on the estimating team, which sounds odd to our listeners, as I thought you were the PM guy. I have general manager, executive background. I love estimating. It all starts with estimating, in my opinion. And so getting that right flows downhill to the information of those that need it. It's that same kind of spoke and wheel thing that we were talking about. And so I have a huge passion. I love the team that we're working on. We redid the curriculum, and it's very hands-on, interactive. It's a 2-day event, usually twice a year, one in the spring, one in the fall. So look at awi.net or .org, sorry. And so they can find all those different things about that. There's a great project management seminar as well. That's a 2-day. The financial management is usually shorter and can be online as well, I believe. So that's the pitch about that. It's a great thing. We're in Louisville, Kentucky right now, but they tend to move all over the country. So look for it in your local area or travel. And there's a lot of people that do.
Awesome. I appreciate you taking time to meet with me. I know while you're traveling and you're in a hotel, I think right now, but I think I know there's a lot of good information that you shared today, and I'm excited to get this out to everybody. As always, it's awesome to be able to just see your face and talk, and look forward to having you on again. And hopefully we can dive into some of these other topics a little bit deeper.
Would love to. Thank you very much.
Thanks, John.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Do you want to stay up to date about industry insights, new content, and our community of millworkers? Go to ductworksmw.com to sign up for our newsletter. I'll see you in the next episode of Verify in Field.